In my self-declared final project, I will be dissecting what literature means to me. As a student who has always liked reading and understanding meanings of text, this has always been a question that has interested me. Today, I will be explaining what literature is through my experience with a certain piece of text. When I first read Peaches in class, it really intrigued me as a reader. This story seemed so strange in my eyes, which only made me want to understand it more. George Jackson writes about a peach tree in such an interesting way. Instead of speaking about it as if it were a plant, she describes it as being a newborn child, which left me extremely confused when I realized the story wasn't about a human child. From the description of what the sprout looks like to the way she treats the plant, every single stage of her description is parallel to how a parent would describe its child. Things take a turn when Jackson mentions that the baby really enjoys the garden and digs a hole for her baby and plants the baby. This is a turning point that truly caught my attention and made me want to understand what Peaches was really about. At first, I obviously thought that the book was about a mother's relationship to her newborn child. When I first found out that the book might not be about my first idea, I began to read every sentence extremely carefully. When I started doing this, I began to get a sense of what the story was truly about. Everything made so much more sense when I started looking at the story as if it were about a peach tree. All of the details that I for sure thought were about a child seemed to have completely changed. There's a section of the short story which mentions bathing the baby in her sink, which clearly seems like it could only be connected to bathing an actual newborn child. But when I approached the line a second time, I realized that you have to sprout a seed before you are able to plant it successfully, which completely explains how the confusing scene of the story is about a peach tree sprout. Boom.
Yo, he's smiling right now. What's good? He's good.
Hey, I'm free, bro.
What are you carrying, bud? What are you doing? What are you doing?
What are you doing, huh?
Yo, my man is legit just blowing that out.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah, this guy's funny, big.
The way I began to understand the short story was through relating it to my own experience. Many people have the responsibility of raising something in their life, and this responsibility came to me this year. A week before reading the short story in class, I got a French Bulldog puppy for my birthday. This extreme responsibility allowed me to connect to all the details that Jackson wrote about in her short story. I was able to completely understand where her words and emotions were coming from, and I connected them to my own experiences, which allowed me to have an even stronger sense of understanding. Every detail that Jackson wrote about reminded me about my situation, allowing me to connect to the emotions that she attempted to portray through her writing. I completely credit my ability to understand and dissect your text to the personal experiences I have had. In my eyes, this perfectly describes what literature really is. Literature is what we think it is. A piece of text on a piece of paper wouldn't mean anything if we couldn't somewhat relate to it. When reading things, we connect it to our personal situations to attempt to understand what the author is creating. When reading Peaches, that is exactly what I did to understand the emotions that Jackson was attempting to evoke, which allowed me to understand the perspective in which Jackson was writing from. Literature would be empty words on a piece of paper if we didn't have personal experiences to relate to what we were reading. So, that is exactly what literature is. Experiences which allow you to connect to what you're reading. In my case, raising my puppy Cooper is a situation that I connected to Jackson's peach tree raising story.
That's yours. All our whiskies arranged. Good boy.